Well, welcome to the 700 Club and Merry Christmas to you. Around the world, countries are pursuing their own strategies to stop the spread of COVID. In Israel, the government turned to one of its most trusted and prominent institutions.
A special unit of the Israeli Defense Forces tasked with tracking and slowing the pandemic. CBN's Chris Mitchell gained special access to this team's work and how it gave the Jewish state a head start in dealing with the Omicron variant.
This base is headquarters for the Israel Defense Forces Homefront Command. Brigadier General Reli Margalit leads the operation here at the Command and Control Center for Israel's battle against COVID-19.
We try to support the health ministry by doing the operations to cut the chain and do other things to stop COVID-19 pandemic and to do as much as possible to let the people go back to their real life.
Manned by thousands of Israeli reservists, they can process more than 10,000 cases a day.
The main advantage is that the army can recruit soldiers very fast and to do very fast operations.
The center's main job is contacting those testing positive and others to stop the chain of infection.
We try to connect the dots and make the transition from the investigation of a specific individual into the understanding of the bigger picture.
Major Harel Bayer oversees the investigation room where the calls are made.
First is the investigation of the individual, where we learn who you are, where you've been, who you've met. This creates the most fundamental, basic database information layer.
Specially designed algorithms help investigators understand how the disease might spread.
We try to create clarification on the way the disease is moving forward and the reasons for it, to understand things we could have done better in order to prevent similar events from reoccurring.
Some may consider this an invasion of privacy.
There is a very big conflict between the privacy of the person and the needed to know where he was. We believe in privacy in Israel, and I don't think it goes too far.
In November, the Prime Minister called for a nationwide drill to test preparedness for the outbreak of a new variant. Then, just a few weeks later, Israel discovered cases of the new Omicron variant inside the country.
It was like a war game with the Prime Minister, and we practiced it 2 or 3 weeks ago. And we did now exactly what we decided. It's amazing.
Margalit says flexibility is key to adapting to changing situations, and he feels like their mission is succeeding.
We cut many chains and we reduced the amount of people get infected. I can say that hundreds of people stay in life because of the operation we did. I'm very proud of being here.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News.
Well, contract tracing is already here in the United States. Back in September, I was in Massachusetts, and I kept getting dinged on my cell phone by the state of Massachusetts asking me to sign up so that they could notify me if I had come in contact with anyone just based on cell phone data. So they were already tracking that. They already knew that I was there, and they were sending me messages ostensibly to help me, but at the same time, you have to look at, do I really want the state of Massachusetts knowing every place I've ever been? In the middle of a pandemic, the state of Massachusetts has a good argument. Well, yeah, indeed, you do want that because we need to stop the chain. If we can find out through contact tracing all the people you are around, we can be effective in reducing the spread of these viruses. So as a culture, and this is not just here in the United States, it's not just in Israel, this is around the world. Are we willing to sacrifice our personal privacy, the most fundamental information, who you know, who you've talked to, where you've been, where you've traveled to, or are we willing to give that up in order to contain this kind of viral infection? That's going to be an ongoing debate because clearly the virus is not going away anytime soon. In other news, the U.S. now has another weapon in its arsenal against COVID. Mark Martin has more of our top stories and that story from the CBN Newsroom.
That's right, Gordon. The FDA approving a Pfizer drug that people can take at home. The Paxlovid treatment is a series of 30 pills taken over a 5-day period Tests show it reduces the risk of hospitalization nearly 90% among people in danger of severe illness from COVID. It's the first COVID treatment that doesn't require an injection or IV. The drug is authorized for high-risk patients, and initial supplies are limited. This as the dominant Omicron variant is sweeping the nation. In an exclusive interview with World News Tonight anchor David Muir, President Biden defended his administration's response to this highly transmissible strain.
What would you say to some Americans who might say this feels like we're chasing Omicron instead of being ahead of it, fully prepared for it?
Well, look, Omicron only really came on the scene just before Thanksgiving. We weren't talking about Omicron 6 months ago, but it's just recent. And so we are chasing Omicron. But the fact of the matter is, you're chasing whatever comes on the scene that wasn't there before. And this wasn't there this last summer, for example. We're in a situation now where we have 200 million people.
During that interview, the president also said he plans to run again in 2024 only if he remains in good health. The U.S. Supreme Court will hold a special session next month to consider the administration's vaccine mandate. The OSHA rule applies to most businesses with more than 100 employees. It requires employers to ensure that unvaccinated workers get weekly COVID tests. The Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals overruled a lower court's order blocking the mandate. The High Court will hear arguments on January 7th. The National Hockey League is pulling out of the Winter Olympics due to COVID concerns, but the virus isn't the only reason some are deciding to skip the Beijing Games. Human rights advocates have condemned China for persecution against religious and ethnic minorities, specifically what's being called a genocide against more than 1 million Uyghur Muslims held in concentration camps in western China. The U.S. and other nations are carrying out a diplomatic boycott of the Olympics by refusing to send any government officials to Beijing. Recently on CBN's Faith Nation, our John Jessup asked former Religious Freedom Ambassador Sam Brownback about that boycott and whether it's enough.
Is this an unprecedented move or a slap on the wrist?
Well, I wouldn't call it an unprecedented move. We've done diplomatic boycotts before, but I think it's an important move, and I hope it causes people to move forward with other efforts to really address this Olympics. Like this week, a group of us called for an advertisers boycott of the Olympic. These major Western companies should be boycotting these Olympics and pulling their money back from advertising if the Chinese government won't announce a date that they're going to close these concentration camps. They've got to close these things down, and we can't be sending them money and advertising how great China is at the same time they're conducting a genocide.
China's Christian population also faces severe persecution. The communist government is requiring churches to add socialist and party propaganda into their teachings. Resistance has led to the arrest of pastors, closing of churches, and the confiscation of religious materials. Despite the pandemic and rising inflation, 2021 could be a banner year in charitable giving in America. Axios reports we could be on track to beat the total giving in 2020, which amounted to $471 billion, which was a 5% increase over 2019. Americans gave $2.7 billion on Giving Tuesday this year, and that's 9% more than in 2020. Analysts say we're still in the middle of the charitable season, with December 31st, one of the biggest giving days of the year. CBN is a global ministry reaching millions around the world, which includes helping those in our own backyard. As Wendy Griffith reports, we recently spread a little holiday cheer in some local neighborhoods.
The spirit of Christmas is on full display here in Hampton Roads as CBN and Operation Blessing share the joy of the season with families in our local community, complete with food, gifts, and a lot of love.
It's come to show love and unity in this time of the year.
A choir of little angels and a live nativity. Just some of the highlights of Christmas at 34th Street, a CBN-sponsored outreach in Norfolk, an area the ministry has been serving for several years.
This is a very underserved community. The needs are great. And when we first started here, we did focus groups to find out what the needs were. So we try to meet those needs by having events just like this.
Cars line the road for this drive-through gift and toy giveaway, which included a Superbook Christmas box filled with DVDs, toy figurines, and activity books for the whole family.
It's wonderful, you know, to know that people love you and that they're in the neighborhood to help you.
Many warmed themselves with hot cider and fresh baked goods prepared by Operation Blessing volunteers. Pastor Nathan Butler of Victorious Living Church says the ministry is making a difference.
It's a great thing and it's a good thing. And yes, can't you feel the love of Jesus? Can't you feel it radiating? There's joy in my soul. Amen. And if just one person, if just one will look up and say, you know, after all them people did, after all that effort, I see I'm going to come on trust God myself. Maybe he can do for me what he done for him.
That same support extending the next day into Portsmouth, with even the Grinch sharing in the festivities.
With the pandemic, food has been one of the needs in the community, and to have CBN here along with Operation Blessing, just to provide meals for the residents, you know, that's it's a wonderful opportunity.
For many, the bags of groceries, which included a frozen turkey, as well as winter hats and gloves, came at just the right time.
I was struggling. I'm on my last $100 worth of EBT to put in my house. And that turkey, the presents, I ain't even had enough money for my son's presents. And they came through and blessed me. And blessed me, especially for hats, coats, gloves, everything. My kids needed all that.
As the holiday outreach wrapped, many were touched by the outpouring of generosity.
Y'all putting the effort to show us that y'all care about the people. So that means a lot to me, not people that look down or, oh, who cares about them? Y'all actually care about us.
Wendy Griffith, CBN News.
That's wonderful. What an example of, again, following the example of Jesus, not just here around the world, but not just around the world, I should say, but also here at home, Gordon.
Well, if you're a member of the 700 Club, that thank you from that wonderful woman, that thank you and that Merry Christmas, it goes to you because you were part of that. A portion of every gift you give to the 700 Club goes into the work of Operation Blessing. Another portion goes into the work of CBN International to preach the gospel around the world. And Christmas is always a good time to say, yes, let's do that together. If you want to be a part of it, all you have to do is call us, 1-800-700-7000. If you want to give a special gift to Operation Blessing in this Holiday 21, you can text that, Holiday 21, to 71777. You can also write us to CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 23463. Just put Operation Blessing on the memo line or Holiday 21 on the memo line, or you can call us, 1-800-700-7000.